When there is uncertainty, magic happens, and then we can have growth, creativity, maybe even, I dare say, actually real happiness, because there is that sense of peace and equanimity that actually comes from that. What do you do when life gets hard and it feels overwhelming, or you're just feeling beaten down? And how do you actually get through that rough patch and keep moving forward? As I don't take this question lightly at all, as I've been through my fair share of shitty, hard times, and I've had to be able to figure it out because thankfully, touch wood, I'm here to be able to actually share this with you. And recently I just got a direct message on Instagram from someone grappling with this very issue. And now I'll keep his name private, but I want to share with you his question.
When things get really hard in life and you're kind of dealing with uncertainty and like a really low point, how do you get yourself to resume back to normal and to like focus on yourself and to keep doing the things that you need to do and like not push your feelings aside, but like get yourself to the point where you can like focus on yourself and keep the momentum and not let it destroy you? Thank you.
So first of all, I want to thank you, this person, for reaching out. And to all of you, if you have questions or any topics that you want me to address, then please send me either a DM on Instagram if you want to keep it private, or if you're happy to keep it public, then actually just put it into the YouTube comments. But when I first received this message, I promised to shoot this episode that I'm sharing with you right now, because I didn't want to half-ass the answer. I didn't want to just shoot an audio back, kind of like giving the whims of something, just quick thinking. I wanted to really actually sit down and think about this properly. So Mr. M, this one's for you. I've only talked a little bit about this, and I don't want to feel like I'm banging on too much about it and telling myself the story of being a victim, but I do feel like this is important to share, as it's not all rainbows and lollipops in life, and neither do I believe it actually should be, as I've had at least 2 diagnosed periods of depression in my life. I've had multiple bouts of pretty dark suicidal ideation, and I found many, many more hard patches in life when it's me being able to try and juggle marriage and fatherhood and entrepreneurship and all the other good stuff that's in life. So when it comes to the rough patches, if we put it lightly, then I've been there and I've worn the t-shirt. But I also feel comfortable in saying that I've been able to positively work through and to be able to get through those times and be able to figure my own shit out. And that's why I want to share this with you today. Now, when I listen to this question, I actually see this in 5 parts. There is understanding hard times. What do we actually really mean when we say things are actually hard? 2, there's dealing with uncertainty. Why can looking at uncertainty the wrong way actually be crippling? 3, there's experiencing low points. Why do we actually become low in our life? What is a low point in our life, and why are we experiencing that? There's number 4 part of this question, which is how do we actually get back onto the horse? How do we actually move through and get through those dark parts? And then there's 5, there's actually maintaining momentum. Once we've kind of gotten back onto the horse, how do we keep on moving forward into the right direction? So this is me breaking this down, understanding the question that Mr. M, you've asked, and how I kind of see this in 5 parts to be able to make sense of this, but practically and realistically, what do we actually do with this moving forward as well? So if I'm sitting down with you, Mr. M, for coffee, let's say, this is what I'm going to be saying. And essentially, this is really just advice to myself as well. So number 1, there's understanding hard times. How do we best perceive hard times so that we can actually grow through them and turn them actually into a positive? So I want to share a personal story with this, because when I was running my last company before selling it, I was working around the clock and my workouts were suffering because I wasn't actually present when I was actually training. I wasn't present as a husband, and I was being a really lousy and shitty dad. Like, I was there physically, but I wasn't there mentally. I wasn't there spiritually. I wasn't there emotionally, because I was still so caught up in work. And honestly, I was actually really angry that those problems existed, because I know I was being a shitty husband and being a shitty father. I was being a shitty dude. And so then it hit me how absurd this all was, because as a CEO, as a business owner, as a man, solving problems, I think it's actually part of the job description. And expecting life to be problem-free, I now believe, is immature. And so it's not about having no problems. It's about being strong and resilient enough to be able to face them and to be able to move through them as well. So if you picture this, that you're walking through a forest and there's a torrential downpour of rain. It's raining absolutely cats and dogs. And then you could curse the storm and you could realize the rain is nourishing the trees. So which way do you want to see it? Do you want to see a storm, it's raining cats and dogs, you're getting wet? Do you want to get pissed off that it's raining? Or do you want to see the actual positive of it as well? And do you expect it never to rain? No, that's absolutely stupid. That's absurd. So being uncomfortable, but understanding that uncomfortableness is actually essential for the growth. And so for me, it's that shifting of perspective. Instead of seeing as the hard time as the obstacle, it's viewing them as opportunities for growth. So every struggle, every time there's a hard patch, there is a lesson in disguise. There is a setback awaiting for you to be able to have a comeback. And so when you embrace the suck, you learn from it, you're able to come out of it stronger as well. Because let's be real, not every hard time is actually going to lead to growth automatically as well. People are just going to be like, oh, there's a silver lining in absolutely all of the hard times that come out. Every problem you have, there's that silver lining. This is a good point. No. I'm not going to automatically subscribe to that. Pain is sometimes just painful. And growth requires the conscious effort and the reflection that those hardships are actually going to leave scars sometimes that do need some professional and real help and things to do to be able to heal them. And so when you recognize and that you need that support and you seek it, then you're going to be able to use the positiveness out of it as well. So then when we listen to that question, there's the dealing with the uncertainty. How do we actually redefine the uncertainty and let go of that control? Now, this is the lesson I learned the hard way, because coming out of a bout of depression, I was seeing a therapist weekly. And then one day, I remember I blurted out, I said, I need control. And she wisely pointed out that I actually control very little. And one of the main tenets of Stoicism, if not the main tenet of Stoicism, is that you have your locus of control, your thoughts, your actions, your behaviors. That is what you control, and everything beyond that you do not control. So imagine if you're surfing right now. I'm a really crappy surfer. I'm going to use a surfing analogy right now. You can't control the waves, but you can control and you can learn how to actually ride them. And so life has the uncertainty, it has all the waves, and in you trying to control them is just going to be an absolute losing game. So instead, learn to actually flow through them, learn to actually ride with them. So when there is uncertainty, magic happens, and then we can have growth, creativity, maybe even, I dare say, actually real happiness, because there is that sense of peace and equanimity that actually comes from that as well. So letting go of control means you do have to trust the process and understand that life's best moments often come from the unexpected. And it's about finding joy, and this is definitely advice I'm giving to myself right now. It's about finding joy in the journey and not in that destination. Because as we are honest with ourselves, letting go of control, it's not easy. For many, control actually equals security. And embracing uncertainty can feel like you're embracing absolutely chaos. And this doesn't mean that you're going to be abandoning all the planning and preparation and things you need to do in life to get shit done. But I think it's more about that balancing control with some flexibility, ensuring that you can actually have a safety net while being open to the change as well. Because then when we come about to the third part, which was the experiencing the low points. Have you subscribed? If not, this is the best time for you to subscribe, whether you're on the YouTube or on the podcast. Why? Because it would be a bummer if you missed out on everything that's to come, or don't subscribe if you're not actually getting much value out of this, because there is a zillion other things that you could be doing. So I'd rather you go and do that. The ball's in your court. Why do we actually come to a low point in life? And so for me, in the last few years, I've had two severe bouts of suicidal ideation. And I remember in the first one, I asked myself, why do I actually get to a low point? Like, what actually is this? What has actually caused this? Why am I feeling so fucking shit right now? As Alan Watts, and I remember I was listening to an Alan Watts, I think it was on the Waking Up app, and he was talking about comparing life and using the analogy as life as a dance. And sometimes you're going to be in rhythm, and sometimes you're going to stumble. And these low points, these stumbles, are part of the actual dance. And so low points aren't failures, which is the way that I was actually really seeing myself. And they're really just a part of the human experience. And they remind us why we're actually alive, why we're pushing boundaries, why we're actually doing things. But also it's the case of the way I kind of see this is like, do I think it's natural to think that do I think it's natural that life is just going to be amazing the entire time? do I think it's natural that I shouldn't have any low points, that I shouldn't have any rough patches, that I shouldn't have any like things go wrong in my life? I think that is absolutely unnatural to think that. So therefore, I should then do my best to embrace me being able to actually tackle and work through those hard patches and those hard times. Because I feel like if we think about us being able to move through a struggle and what those low points really are, struggle often is really going to have a case of like resistance. And when I resist what is actually happening, that's when I'm actually going to suffer. And what is really happening when I am struggling with something, this is something I'm telling myself, and I work with myself as often as I possibly can, is if I'm struggling with something, it is simply the case that I'm not accepting it. And I think that's kind of like, that's the pin that can pop the balloon, pop the bubble that is struggle. Because if I'm struggling, what am I not accepting? And if I can accept it, then there is suddenly a pop of it and that struggle can go away. So as soon as I can actually accept whatever it is that I'm struggling with, the struggle itself becomes really easy to dissolve. And then that shift from resistance to acceptance is that powerful tool for me, and this is what's worked for me, finding peace and being able to move forward. Because then there's that case of, okay, well then how do I get back onto the horse? Okay, let's say I've accepted, I've pierced it, I'm experiencing a low point, I'm trying to perceive it the right way. Well, how do I actually get back onto the horse and how do I pick myself back up? And so when I'm feeling low, I feel like it's essential to be able to approach it with mindfulness and compassion. And this is where I think actually like Buddhist philosophy has really goddamn helped me. And so I used to berate myself when I was having hard times. I used to be like, Chris, you're being a bitch. Like I had a real negative self-talk with myself and it was not a good thing whatsoever. So for me, having to go through this process and I could finally see that. I'm like, why am I being so harsh upon myself? I'm my own worst critic. What do I actually do about it? And I kind of came to these like four steps, if we wanted to say this. There was mindful observation. So I needed to be able to actually like sit down and actually observe. So for me, meditation and having some mindfulness as to what's going on has been a really big help because I've been able to then, if I can sit and at least observe my breath, and I can use that tether to then be able to then go a little bit deeper with some introspection with myself to feel out what's actually going on. Because for me, it's not about mindfulness. A lot of people, I think, bang on about mindfulness. No. I think mindfulness, you do this so that you can have proper investigation. And so for me, it's kind of then I can have self-compassion because when I'm able to observe myself and I can then start to have some proper investigation to say, okay, Chris, have some self-compassion to myself. I'm able to offer myself kindness and understanding. And I try to think, and I come use the analogy myself, how can I be my own best friend? How can I actually just be a friend to myself? Because from there, once I'm able to do that, I can then have some small steps. So there's mindfulness, there's self-compassion, and there's what is the small steps? What's the one little next step just to be able to then be able to have some momentum? So I can set an achievable forward positive next step. It's a small victory with myself, and then I can start having some gradual momentum, and then that then leads to being able to go to a support system. And for me, this was the hard one because for me, being able to go to somebody else and ask for help, I couldn't do that at the beginning. I had to kind of like work through it. And I think if I was a better person and like better, if I keep working on myself, hopefully I could actually go to my support system with whatever that is much sooner. But if I felt completely stuck, I think that's where the hardest part is taking that first step. And because you feel paralyzed in those circumstances. So that's when you best able to lean on your support system. Let others help you find your footing. Remember that those small steps, no matter how tiny they really are still steps forward. And so by accepting your current state, practicing mindful awareness, extending compassion to ourselves, then when we start to create conditions to be able to rise up from our strugglings as well. And so I feel like through that mindfulness and compassion, we can then navigate our low points with greater ease and resilience. And so from then, there comes to the fifth point, which is, well, okay, I'm back onto the horse. How can I continue to maintain momentum? I don't want to fall back off the horse again. How do I continue to get better, evolve as myself, And so once I've gotten started, I want to be able to think of like, what's that consistent action that I need to be able to do? How do I keep moving? What is it? And actually, no, how do I keep moving, but be happy with it being slow at first? And I feel like this is where patience was something that I really had to be able to learn. I wanted everything now. I wanted my company to be earning more money and hitting our sales and revenue and profit targets now. I wanted to be in phenomenal shape. I wanted to be more jacked and leaner. Now, I wanted like everything. I wanted that kind of like instant gratification. And the more I was able to build patience as that virtue within myself and be totally happy without that instant gratification and be completely at peace with that, I feel like then like one day I realized it was like I was absolutely blissed out. Yeah, this was true. I really had this one moment. It was after depression, suicidalization, all that shit, right? And I got back on the horse. I was building up momentum. And then I remember one day I was just feeling completely blissed out. And I actually said to a friend of mine, I was like, I feel like I'm just like mainlining MDMA right now. And that's when I realized I was actually in a really good spot. Now, by no means am I still in that. And no, I've not stayed in that state like permanently at all. I still get pissed off. I still distance myself when I have a conflict with others. I'm still very much a flawed human being. But I think I've been able to actually raise my average level of peace. And I feel like I've been able to get much better at when tough times, rough patches happen, I've been able to bounce back and get back to that average level of peace and equanimity that I'm ultimately looking for. And so I feel like being able to go through this, and hopefully with what I'm sharing with you today, you're able to better pick yourself up and bounce back to normal faster. Yeah, I think that's actually the intention of why I wanted to share that with you today. So, Mr. M, thank you for having the cojones to actually ask that question. I really do appreciate that. That takes cojones doing what it is that you just did, and I absolutely applaud that. And for everyone else, remember this, because this is what I want to remember, that life is full of ups and downs. Embrace the journey, learn from those struggles, and then keep moving forward, because God damn it, you've got this. And if you found this helpful, if you feel like this could be helpful for somebody else, then share it out there. If you haven't click like, because God damn it makes me feel better about myself, looking for gratification from others. And hit subscribe so you don't miss out on all the absolute other good stuff I'm able to share with you as well. And as always, thank you so much for your time and attention. I will see you in the next episode. If you've enjoyed this episode and it's vibed with you, then make sure that you hit subscribe, whether you're on the YouTube or on the podcast. And importantly, if there is any guests that you want me to have on the show or specific questions or topics that you want me to be able to cover for you, simply put it into the YouTube comments or send me an Instagram DM. That way I can make sure you're getting the most out of actually being here.